One conservative, one liberal, two speeches, same town. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
He is finally saying his name.
What President Trump says about Canada is wrong. We cannot allow others to control us. We cannot allow President Trump to distract us from the work we need to do here at home.
That's the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, mentioning the U.S. president by name in a speech to a business crowd in Toronto, the Economic Club of Canada. As Poilievre outlined his view on the Canada-U.S. relationship. Well, Poilievre said there are things on which he and Prime Minister Carney agree. There are others where they part ways, such as the idea that Canada's relationship with the United States has been ruptured.
Canada's prosperity and security are inseparable from a stable relationship with the United States. And that is why we should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with Beijing, a regime the Prime Minister himself said was the biggest threat to Canada just a year ago.
While Pierre Poilievre was saying Donald Trump's name out loud and warning against closer ties with China, Liberal Cabinet Minister Dominic LeBlanc was not far away. He was at the Canadian Club in Toronto, and that word came up again, rupture.
The speech in Davos talked about a rupture and middle powers looking to enhance their trade with reliable trading partners around the world. Canada should be at the top of that list. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean we can't continue to improve some of the natural headwinds that develop over time. But if we need to sign more free trade or investment agreements with some of these emerging economic powers, his visit to India is a very important part of that effort.
Dominic LeBlanc is the top person in Prime Minister Carney's cabinet on the trade file. And it sounded like he agreed with Poilievre to a certain extent that Canada can't escape the reality that the United States is right next door.
There's this giant border with the biggest economy in the world. So it's a natural thing to load your product or your services on a truck or go to deliver your services on a direct flight to the United States. That's been the history since Mr. Mulroney and President Reagan. So it's not, and that will always be we're going to have one neighbor. It's the biggest economy. All of that will remain true. So they can all be true at the same time.
Across town at the Poilievre event, the Conservative leader was outlining his points of departure from the Liberals, such as the time it takes to advance projects in this country.
Some of the worst tariffs imposed on Canada today are those imposed by the government here. Slow permits, changing rules, high taxes, outright bans on shipping oil off our northwest BC coast. We have the second slowest building permits anywhere in the OECD. It now takes 19 years to get a mine approved. None of that has changed in the last year.
Poilievre outlined several proposals yesterday to deal with trade relations with the United States and to spur business activity at home. They include a strategic energy and mineral reserve. Poilievre said such a reserve would be stored domestically and available to secure the country and its allies during a time of war, crisis, or supply disruption. He also said he would pursue a new tariff-free auto pact and promised to keep Chinese-made EVs out of Canada. He said the country should accelerate the commercialization of Canadian-made IT by at least 50% in the next decade. Poilievre said it's up to the government to concentrate on what it can control because it can't control Donald Trump. He also stressed the importance of national unity.
The best leverage we have, though, is to be united here at home. All political parties love Canada. The Democrats, Conservatives, and Liberals love it a little differently than the Bloc Québécois, but even they want the best for their constituents. And the best way for us to become unbreakable in our negotiations and our discussions with other countries is to work to be united here at home.
Around the corner, Dominic LeBlanc suggested there is unity, at least when it comes to the federal government and the premiers.
And there are always tensions in the Federation. That's as old as the Confederation itself. But there's a real desire from first ministers, provincial territorial ministers, and everybody to figure out ways that those differences of opinion don't become sources of distrust or reasons to diminish the confidence in what we need to do in the country right now.
As for the CUSMA renegotiation coming up this summer, LeBlanc suggested that all the tough talk that we hear from the White House really doesn't tell the whole story. The two sides are still talking.
There is a public prosecution of the argument, the political argument in the United States, and there are the private government-to-government conversations, which are not discouraging. They are proceeding, the Americans are proceeding under American law. Ambassador Greer updates Congress. They consult the U.S. industry, as we have done in Canada.
Well, Prime Minister Carney is in India and later Australia and Japan. Dominic LeBlanc will be in Washington next week for trade talks, with all the sides working towards a July 1st deadline. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
He's our expert in communications, crisis communications, political communications, branding, and leadership. Barry McLoughlin is the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants, with offices in Ottawa and Washington. Barry teaches at the University of Ottawa's Professional Development Institute and at Cape Breton University's Shannon School of Business. You can follow him on his Substack and listen to his podcast, and he's with us every Friday. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Rob. Great to be with you again.
Let's talk hockey and communications. All right, let's start with Team USA's actions after defeating Team Canada in the men's gold medal hockey game at the Olympics. I'm sure many people have seen the video by now. Players on that team heard laughing on a phone call with Donald Trump when he made a remark about, I have to invite the women's team or I'd be impeached. Someone can be heard yelling, "Close the northern border." And, of course, all of these players were at the White House, and then they were at the State of the Union. So Brady Tkachuk is the captain of our hockey team, the one we cheer for, Barry, the Ottawa Senators. And they had a game last night in Ottawa against the Detroit Red Wings. And before the game, Brady Tkachuk he's surrounded by the sports media and kind of forced to explain a lot of this. Let's listen to a little bit of Brady Tkachuk.
I mean, honestly, it's just for coming off the ice, and I think it was 15 minutes later, you have the President of the United States calling you. You just can't really believe you're still riding the high of being a world champ, and for the President to take time and call. And when it comes to the women's team, I mean, I just have a story of one of my favorite memories from Olympics is after we won and after the women's team came back from the closing ceremonies, both our teams are just in the dining hall, hanging out, having fun, just kind of being on top of the world. You have two gold medalist teams just hanging out before we're going back to our respective cities, and it was just great to hear their experience. A lot of us went to a couple of their games, and they know that we supported them throughout the whole tournament. And honestly, when they scored, the OT, when Megan Keller scored the OT winner, I think there's 15 of us in one of the lounges back at the Village, and we were all standing up, going nuts, clapping, and I just remember it's like, they just achieved their dream, and that gave us so much motivation to go win the gold medals ourselves.
Okay. Some people are mad at these players. They say they should be ashamed of themselves. What do you think?
Well, I noticed actually the Tkachuk brothers, Brady and his brother Matthew, even last year, the 4-on-4 tournament, that there was a nasty edge, not just on the ice towards Canadians, but, afterwards and so on. Just always had that certain kind of, you don't quite get, you're playing in the nation's capital for a Canadian team. Be a little sensitive to dissing Canadians. And they did the same thing again in the Olympics. So I wasn't totally surprised that Brady did that. And he doesn't seem to get at all the relationship. If a Canadian player went down to L.A. for the L.A. Kings, they wouldn't start trashing Los Angeles and so on. They just wouldn't be doing that. And there's no sensitivity whatsoever. So yeah, he got hit hard in social media. I don't really. You got to give them half a credit because they're so busy in their hockey, they're not really paying attention. Okay, we kind of get that, but my gosh, if you're not aware that Donald Trump is a very, very controversial, nasty, anti-Canadian president in the history of that country, if you don't get that, then you're asleep. And you go in there and you're the first one rushing into the Oval Office. You're there, right there. I just think there was a lack of sensitivity on his part. I hope it dies down for his sake and the Senator's sake. I'm glad he scored a goal last night, even though we lost. But at least, I think what'll save him is a Stanley Cup win. But we have to be realistic here. I just feel that it was just over the top.
Over the top. Okay. What about this? If the president invites you to the White House, go to the White House. It's a tradition. Yeah. What about that?
I have no trouble. Yeah, I have no trouble with that. I have no trouble with that at all. I think people are overreacting to that one. And frankly, okay, you could say, well, for this, the president's speech the other night, okay, they were invited. That was an unusual. It was a big call out, and it's supposed to be nonpartisan in a way. But I don't really entirely. I'm not blaming him even for that. It's just the comments he made or was alleged to have made. And in fairness to him, I'm glad he stood up and said, I never said that, nor would I say that. Okay, we need to hear that from you. I didn't really hear an apology from him, by the way. I thought Sanderson did give an apology for the laugh about the women's hockey, but I didn't hear much of an apology from Brady at all.
Okay. I will say the Canadian NHL clubs do seem to be taking it seriously. They made Brady, for example, the Senators organization made Brady Tkachuk available. You have to give the organization credit for that. They
absolutely
doesn't have to speak to the media.
That's
and
right.
Connor Hellebuck did a 6 or 7 minute interview with someone from the Jets, the Winnipeg Jets organization. That put it up on YouTube and asked the same sort of questions. What about the phone call? What about the invitation to the White House?
Yeah.
So they are the clubs themselves, these Canadian clubs. Yeah. I think they understand, Barry.
Oh, yeah.
We do have to address this because we have a fan base here, right?
You're so right. And we're very politicized in Ottawa. So if you're not aware of that, you're asleep at the switch. So I'm glad the Sens organization is making it more out in the open, dealing with it and not running away from it.
All right. Pierre Poilievre said Donald Trump's name yesterday. We'll ask Barry about Poilievre's speech on Canada-U.S. relations, billed as his most important speech since he lost the election. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
We are back with Barry McLoughlin, the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. Pierre Poilievre delivered a speech in Toronto yesterday about Canada-U.S. relations, mentioned Donald Trump by name, which is something that people have pointed out. He didn't do that during his speech at the Conservative Party convention in Calgary. What did you think of the speech?
I think it was a first step in a journey. I think it was an important first step. It's almost unbelievable that the leader of His Majesty's official opposition would not mention President Trump by name or by title in his entire time, in the past year. So that was quite something. The fact that he did it, I think he was almost kind of pushed into it because people began saying, okay, fine, but what about what we care about? And he certainly did that on affordability. He captured that issue. Housing captured that issue. Carbon tax captured that issue. He's got a great political ear. So you'd have to say, in that case, silence was coming across as acquiescence. Silence was not neutral anymore. silence was not standing up for Canada. And we needed to hear him do that. And it was mild, but at least he did it. And that's the first step.
What would you encourage him to do after the first step?
Well, he kind of says the content pieces of it are kind of troubling. We won't, our goal is not to pay any tariffs. Well, duh. Okay, but what would you do? What are you prepared to do? What would we expect from a conservative government? And other than he says, we should really not be giving China any sales. That's an echoing of Donald Trump's line, by the way, that, we shouldn't be buying any EVs from China. It kind of sinks back into that. He doesn't really have any tangible steps. I think he's afraid to give too much credit to Carney. And we know this is a bit of a waiting game by definition. We're dealing with a childish, emotional president who can go from 10% to 15% overnight. Depends how he woke up that morning. That's what we're dealing with here. And Carney's figured that out, but I don't know. Pierre Poilievre has to signal that he's figured them out too.
Yeah, but what about this recognition? Because Carney talks about a rupture. Things have been ruptured. Things are never going to be the same again. Forget about the old times. We're in a new world order. Okay?
Yeah.
Mr. Poilievre is saying they're right next door. He even quoted President Kennedy yesterday at his speech, which I'm sure did not go unnoticed by you.
Yeah.
You can't escape the reality that they're right next door and they're still our largest trading partner. Nothing even comes close to the importance of this relationship. Isn't that just a recognition of reality, Barry?
Absolutely. Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is blatantly obvious that we are in that situation and will be for years to come. You cannot turn around and create brand new markets overnight and distribution and supply chains and everything else. But he's sure making an effort going around the world to try to lock in the deals wherever he can. And of course, it's important that you not sound like, Trump light on anything. Canadians are highly sensitive, apropos our previous conversation about hockey players, that people are very sensitive to this. We are dealing with somebody that Canadians now loathe, and that ain't going to change. Now, he doesn't have to loathe for the sake of it, but he always knew he was vulnerable in this area. He was out there during the truckers' convoy, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a sensitive area for him, and I hope he continues down that path. He's not going to necessarily gain huge votes, but it'll avoid slippage of more.
All right. Interesting. Thank you. Enjoy the weekend, Barry. There's mild weather on the way. It will be most welcome in these parts. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Finally.
Yeah. Barry McLoughlin, president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. Tom Korski from Blacklock's report. Great stuff this week from Tom. Wait till you hear it. That's coming right up. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. Tom Korski is back with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Rob.
Alto. It's called Alto, high-speed rail between Quebec City and Toronto. 300-kilometer-an-hour bullet trains. A ride from Toronto to Montreal in 3 hours. It sounds great, Tom, but concerns are being raised. What's happening?
And raised by, in one instance, an MP who's riding will see the route go through part of his county, Lanark County, Ontario, Eastern Ontario. That's Conservative MP Scott Reid, let alone ratepayers in places like far-flung jurisdictions like Mount Pearl or Portage la Prairie, who will never step foot on this train, but will have to pay for it. The cost, $60 billion to $90 billion. MP Reid in third reading debate on the High-Speed Rail Network Act, which allows expropriation of property by the rail managers, Crown Corporation, as you mentioned, said, look, this thing is going to be a catastrophe. It's a boondoggle. We don't have the money. It's going to cost a fortune. It's going to be a ripoff, and my property owners are already getting excited about no compensation for loss of land values. Rob, how often do you see a steamship headed straight for an iceberg? And this is the thing.
I'm going to have a few clips of Scott Reid during Talkback today, I want to ask our listeners in Halifax how they feel about, say, spending $9,000 of their family's money on a high-speed rail line between Quebec City and Montreal. Also, our listeners in Calgary, where they don't even have a VL rail station right now. But let's listen. Scott Reed has been around forever. He's, I think he may be, along with Cheryl Gallant, longest-serving Conservative MP, probably right now. I think
going way back to the Reform days. That's right, Reform days.
So Eastern Ontario, Ottawa Valley, Conservative MP, and never one for hyperbole. A very, very thoughtful guy. Let's listen here.
We have a pretty good idea that in practice, if the costs are not very low and the speed does not cause people don't tend to shift to rail unless the travel time is under 2 hours. So that's not likely to generate the expected ridership. That means that revenues will be very low. The subsidies will be in the multiple billions of dollars every year. Again, we can't afford this. I suspect that if anything does get built, it would be the Ottawa to Montreal part, at which point the low ridership will show the whole thing was a catastrophe and will stop halfway through, much like we did with Mirabel Airport, where it was going to be a giant airport, and once we saw the insane costs and the low usage, the whole thing was shut down.
Yeah, and people are bringing this up, even Block members are bringing this up. Is this Mirabel, Tom? Is this Mirabel 2.0?
Oh, sure. And, you know, the chief executive, the management of the Crown Corporation, this Alto Train Corporation, the chief executive officer testified in Senate National Finance Committee. They're already cagey. Like he was cross-examined quite pointedly and in a spirited fashion, including by Liberal appointees from Quebec, who you would think would be huge supporters of this, on the cost estimates. And he acknowledged, as MP Reid put it, it was a stab in the dark. They don't really know how much it will cost, but it seems like a neat idea. The time frames on this, Rob, are staggering. 7 years just to build the first leg. This has just a rabbit hole written all over it.
Yeah, it runs out to potentially 2046.
No, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I have a friend of our family's has a hobby farm near Maxville, which is you're about an hour outside of Ottawa to get to Maxville, and then you're about an hour and a half away from urban Montreal. And he has a hobby farm there: horses, chickens, ducks, grows pumpkins, and he's quite concerned. It says it looks like this train is coming right through my place, right through it. So a lot of concerns. Yeah, expropriation
is always absolutely a tragedy. When they built the floodway in Winnipeg, that was, my heavens, 1950. People never got over it, destroyed neighborhoods. Everywhere that's happened, expropriation is out. You're talking about people's livelihood. And I have to say, Rob, for this cost, for what will start out as a commuter train between Ottawa and Montreal, maybe I'm peculiarly parochial. The last time I went to Montreal was to see an Expos game. What does that tell you? And I live here, so I can imagine someone in Portage la Prairie.
Well, maybe that'll change when you can go to the train station, which they're saying it'll be the train station. Will be a stone's throw from your office in downtown Ottawa. They're going to make the old train station the train station again.
They've already shot that down because they would.
Well,
they would be running these now slow speed trains along a canal through a neighborhood, which is really now a park where people like to skate, have picnics. So there's.
That's not happening?
They're making it up on the fly. Look out for that iceberg, Rob.
Okay. All right. Let's very quickly squeeze another story in here. What is the Bank of Canada saying about what I would describe as the credit stress of Canadians?
Early warning signal, they call it. Their words, not mine. They have calculated. Everyone knows that people who are starting to fall into the hole on debt will starve if they have to keep up the mortgage payments, because otherwise you're on the street. What they've done for the first time is determine the time span. And they've concluded through their data, this was looking at hundreds of thousands, millions of credit reports at TransUnion. They've concluded it's about 18 months to 2 years. In other words, a homeowner who starts to fall behind on their credit card balance, that typically is a 2-year heads up to default on a mortgage. Why does this matter? They say, in their data, absolutely crucial to get as early as you can in terms of finding out your delinquency rate on mortgages, because that's where the banks get in trouble.
Here's a disturbing statistic. 1/3, 34% report monthly household spending is more than their income. Wow. That's not encouraging. We'll be right back. With Tom Korski, we will talk about subsidies for the news business, loans to Canada Post, what's the prospect of being paid back, and fighting climate change in Italy by renovating an office. Wait till you hear the price tag about that. When we return, this is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Tom Korski, the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. How much are taxpayers paying to subsidize the news?
$170 million last year. $170 million. And that included payroll rebates. Small business people, farmers, ranchers, always happy to hear this. That included payroll rebates of up to $29,750. Let's just round it to $30,000 a year for a newsroom employee. You find me a farm, a ranch, a small business in Canada that wouldn't like to have a $30,000 rebate per year for each employee. Absolutely infuriating, Rob, and their own internal research at the Privy Council shows when you inform Canadians on this, they get hot and angry.
$29,750 a year per newsroom employee. I can remember when I first started working in a newsroom, my salary was $16,000. So it's double what my starting salary was so many years ago. That is a remarkable sum. The thing is, there was always a concern that this would become structural. And the news industry in Canada would come to rely on the generosity of the government it is tasked with covering. And it seems to me that has now come to pass, Tom.
That's exactly the case. We don't want to put too fine a point on it, but here's a story you're not going to read in the Winnipeg Free Press. The publisher of the Free Press in the day in 2019, his name was Bob Cox. I remember Bob when he worked in the press gallery for Canadian Press here in Ottawa. And he was testifying. He was chair of the Canadian Newspaper Association, as it was called in the day. And he testified on this. He said it had to be temporary. You need a deadline, said Bob. I quote him accurately. He said this to MPs in committee. Deadlines focus you and get you moving to where maybe you aren't moving now. This is my favorite part. I don't like the idea of a long-term subsidy for newspapers that becomes permanent. Is 5 years about right? Asked a Liberal MP. Oh, yes, said publisher Cox. Good luck getting an interview with Bob Cox about that. They lied. Let's just put the cards on the table. And now they don't want to report it. They have, Rob, the impact of this on integrity in media has been absolutely staggering. We warned them. We told them. Nobody listened.
Yeah. Yeah, the damage to the credibility. And people were warning about this. Don't take the money. Don't take the money. How's that going to look? People aren't going to trust you as much as they're supposed to trust you. And now you look at the numbers about trust in the news media. 60% of Canadians don't trust the news media.
Completely rational. Absolutely.
And I hear it all the time from callers, bought and paid for, you're getting, you're government funded, all the damage that this has done. The Canadian news media is incalculable. It really is. Okay, moving on. Enough of that. Canada Post keeps getting loans now from the government. Canada Post used to be able to fund itself through its own operations, selling postage, what have you. It can't do that anymore. It has to come to the government. The government says, okay, we will lend you $1 billion. And then again, we will lend you $1 billion. What are first of all, how much has the government on our behalf allowed this company to borrow? And what are the chances it will ever be paid back?
over $2 billion, $2.04 billion in the last 13 months. These were in emergency credits. Terms of the loans are not known. MPs have asked for them. They have not been tabled. Are they paying interest on that? And it's interesting that according to Canada Post management, these are not good time Charlie investments. They don't even try calling it an investment. They're quite candid. They say this is to keep us, we're up against the wall. They use the word insolvency. They needed $2 billion in emergency funding in 13 months so they could keep delivering mail. And now MPs have asked, we're never going to see this money again, are we? They asked in committee. And the Canada Post Corporation said, no, these are repayable loans. And as soon as we start making money again, we're going to start making payments. And in this case, one of the chair of the Commons Government Operations Committee, MP Kelly McCauley from Edmonton West, said, forget it. If you're a taxpayer, you're never going to see that $2 billion again.
Wow. All right. Canada used to have a consulate in Milan. And 2007 rolls around. Don't really need a consulate in Milan, full consulate. We'll just hire a local lawyer instead. They can do the consular work in Milan on behalf of the Canadian government. 2020 arrives. Let's reopen the consulate in Milan. And let's make it a showcase, okay? Let's make it a green consulate and show how serious we are about fighting climate change. I'm not kidding you, in Milan, Italy. How much did that cost?
Staggering cost. Final bills only came in 2023. We see this not only now through access to information. It was $18.6 million. Almost $19 million. Rob, they didn't buy a building. This is to lease an office. $19 million in Milan when the embassy is on the bullet train, an actual bullet train, 500 kilometers away in Rome. How do you spend $19 million on an office? They found a way.
They found a way. And how many employees work there in this $18 million green office in Milan? Five.
Five lucky employees. And $37,000 worth of art.
It's
a living.
Something? You and I should, when we get into this racket, Tom, we got to get into the diplomatic corps. We got to get into the diplomatic corps somehow.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Isn't that something? Aren't you glad somebody's minding Ottawa's business? Tom Korski is from Blacklock's Reporter. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
And if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, now you know with Rob Snow, there's a great new mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. And Seeker, spelled Seekr, and it has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. And now you know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Some new podcasts you might want to check out, like Big Headlines, an offshoot of the Big Story podcast, all your headlines in 5 minutes. And for fans of the true crime genre, Phil Martino and Madison Fitzpatrick bring you Tracking a Killer, the cold case files, also on the Seeker app, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Won't be much longer before the Toronto Blue Jays return to action for real. Opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays is just 1 month from today. That's how long the baseball season can be. 1 month from today. Opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays, March 27th. It's also the home opener in Toronto against the visiting Athletics. And the roster's kind of coming together. We learned this week Max Scherzer will be back. 1 year deal, $3 million. He's 41 years old now. His numbers weren't great last year. He appeared in 17 games, 5-5 record, 5.19 ERA. But I think a lot of fans will remember those two starts that he had for the Jays during the World Series, Game 3, Game 7. The epic stare down with Jays manager John Schneider. Where he's going to fit in remains a matter of debate because Sportsnet says the likely rotation to start the season looks like this: Kevin Gausman, Dylan Cease, Trey Savage, Jose Barrios, and Cody Ponce. There's also Shane Bieber, Eric Lauer likely to be the long reliever out of the bullpen. And in curling, one of the country's most important curling events started today in St. John's, Newfoundland. It's the Briar. The Team Canada rink is Brad Jacobs out of the Glencoe Club in Calgary, just fresh from winning the gold medal in Italy. Team Alberta, Kevin Cooey's rink. He's won the Briar, I think, 4 times. Northern Ontario skipped by Sandy McEwen out of Sudbury. The other Ontario rink skipped by 22-year-old Jaden King, based out of London, Ontario. The Nova Scotia rink is Team Thompson, Kendall Thompson from the Halifax Curling Club. And there are 2 rinks from the host province of Newfoundland and Labrador. There's Brad Gushue's rink. This will be Gushue's last Briar. He's won it, I think, 6 times. And the other Newfoundland rink skipped by Nathan Young, both out of the St. John's Curling Club. The Briar runs from today until a week from Sunday and is being held at the Mary Brown's Center in St. John's. Mary Brown's Fried Chicken, founded in Newfoundland. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback, Friday free-for-all Talkback. From hockey to rail lines to foreign aid, it could all be in the mix for us today. Wherever you want to take us, we have phone lines available now at 1-833-668-2577. And whatever's on your mind, feel free to raise it on the Friday free-for-all Talkback. Coming up right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today is the Friday free-for-all. We don't come up with the topics on Fridays, always have a few ready to go, but we prefer to know what's on your mind. So what's on your mind today? What do you want to talk about? If you want to talk about something that's been in the news, there's always news. Lots of it this week. Lots of news this week. If you want to talk about something you think should be in the news, just feel free to raise it here. Whatever it happens to be, can be serious, not so serious. We have a phone line for you. All of our phone lines open right now. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And as always, if you've never called before, just mention that, okay? And we'll make your call a priority. These are just conversation starters. Just throwing them out there. Maybe they'll get things going today. We've all had time to cry in our beers and lick our wounds and get over the loss of both the men's and women's gold medal hockey teams at the Olympics. Both games, good games. Both went to overtime. And both times the Americans scored and won the gold medal. We'll get them next time. What we want to know today is what is your opinion about the American men's hockey players? You know, taking that phone call from Donald Trump, laughing, making wisecracks, accepting his invitation to go to the White House. And then they went to the White House. And then they were invited to the State of the Union address. And then they went to the State of the Union address and they were feted at the State of the Union address. Because I'm telling you, there are some people, especially in the news media, who think, you know, this is not a very good look. This is not a very good look for these hockey players. And some of the criticism has been very, very harsh. For example, there's a column in the Toronto Star. It just absolutely eviscerates these players. It's written by a guy named Dave Bedini. Now, Dave Bedini, we have a little music from Dave Bedini. Dave Bedini founded the Canadian band, the Rio Statics. Now, if you were listening to Canadian rock back in the mid-1990s, you may remember the Rio Statics. They had a hit back in the mid-1990s. It was called Claire. Do you have a little bit of that, Curtis? Claire. Yeah, that was a good song. Claire, Claire. Rio Statics. Dave Bedini co-founded that band. And from time to time, he has a column in the Toronto Star. And he, this week, says those American men, those players on that hockey team, they should be ashamed of themselves. Says they should have declined an invitation from, quote, a sexual predator and felon who has ordered the mass imprisonment of people with a different skin tone than his. And he says they've let down all kinds of little children who look up to these hockey players and see them as heroes. And he even says, quote, they have poisoned the culture. They've poisoned the culture and they should all apologize. The men's hockey team. The top sports columnist in the Globe and Mail, Cathal Kelly, said the State of the Union address was a zoo and the players on Team USA were the monkeys. And he said they were used as props. Donald Trump used them as props. And he doesn't come right out and say this, but he strongly suggests that these players were just too stupid to know that they were used as props. Quote, a lot of them went to college, but none of them actually went to college. They went to hockey. I'd be shocked if more than a handful of them ever read a book that wasn't Harry Potter. Ouch. The leading columnist in the Winnipeg Free Press, Don Lett, calls the actions of Connor Hellebuck utterly disheartening. He says by accepting this invitation from Trump, he has, quote, cemented himself as a character in the narrative of a political leader with tyrannical aspirations, and, quote, Winnipeggers and Jets fans will have to live with the fact that our relationship with Hellebuck has become paradoxical. Most of us will continue loving him for the player and human being he is. At the same time, many of us will be profoundly disappointed in what he has done. What do you think of these opinions? Do you think they're right on the money? And these American hockey players should be ashamed of themselves for being seen in the same room as Donald Trump? Or do you think they took part in a long-standing tradition? They were invited to the White House by the sitting president as a victorious team, and they accepted the invitation. It's time to move on. 1-833-668-2577. If you want to jump in on that one, love to hear from you. High-speed rail. We talked about this with Tom Korski from Blacklocks. This Alto plan. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? The government wants to build, the government plans to build a high-speed rail line that runs from Toronto to Quebec City. Along the route, it's going to make stops in Trois-Rivières, Laval, Montreal, Ottawa, Peterborough, before finally ending in Toronto. Trains running up to 300 kilometers an hour. The whole line will be about 1,000 kilometers from end to end. Construction could begin in about 3 years. First phase might open in a decade. The full line might be finished 20 years from now. 20 years from now. According to the plans as they stand right now, the price tag is somewhere between $60 and $90 billion. Boosters of the plan say you could take a train from Toronto to Montreal in 3 hours. Toronto to Montreal, 3 hours. The government thinks it makes a lot of sense because about half the Canadian population lives along this corridor, Toronto, Quebec City. It's more than 20 million people live along the route. But if you're in Halifax today, what do you think about it? Not going to do you much good. Or if you're in Calgary, what do you think about it? Your money's going towards it. Not going to do you much good either. What do you think about spending? I mean, the early estimate, the 2026 estimate, $60 to $90 billion. I think we all know it's going to be a lot more than that. For a light rail train, a high-speed rail train, a high-speed rail train system, Quebec City to Toronto. Worth the time, worth the money, an important project for Canada, be good for the country? Or is this a massive boondoggle in the making? 1-833-668-2577. Just a couple of conversation starters. It is the Friday Free-for-All Talkback. What's on your mind today? Let us know. Let's get the conversation going today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's get things underway on the Friday Free-for-All Talkback with Ryan. He's in Calgary today. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. What's on your mind?
Where to start? Called in about our great Canada wall for Trump yesterday.
Oh, yeah,
and,
right.
yeah, it's all talk. And, yeah, I'm just worried about our country, where it's headed. And you were just talking about sports and the Canadian team and all that. And, yeah, it seems like it's just distractions. Like, we're not really focused on important tasks. And
Okay,
then
what do you
Alberta's
think? What
budget
do you think the
yesterday,
country should be focused on? What do you think the country should be focused on?
taking care of ourselves and getting out of debt somehow. Like out in Alberta here, they just passed that budget yesterday, and I'm just in shock. Like, where is all our money going? Like, it's quite something to see, actually.
Well, yeah, I'm surprised. I wasn't surprised by the size of the deficit. That had been telegraphed, going to be a big deficit. Okay. You're very
they
sensitive
talk
to
about
oil
it's
prices.
all
The
oil.
oil price goes down $1. It costs the Alberta
it's all
Treasury
nonsense.
$750 million. What I am surprised is that the education property taxes are going up. Very surprised by that. But the premier would say, well, we're making big investments in education. How are we supposed to pay for it? Your education property taxes are going up, but also a
But
new
they've been
rental car
saying
tax.
The same stuff over and over, like the COP, Canada Olympic Park, back in '86 for the Olympics. That's been rotting away on the side of the hill for 40 years. Like, where's the federal government? Like, they just built it and then let it rot. Like, I feel sorry for all these veterans and old people that fought for this war, and they just, like, we're not fighting for it anymore. It seems
Okay, not
like
focused on the right things. Okay, Ryan, thank you. We're off and running on the Friday Free for All Talkback. We have 3-4 lines available there. 1-833-668-2577. Eric is in Halifax. Hello, Eric.
Hey, Rob. How you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, very good, Eric. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, first of all, I don't think Hellenbach deserved the Medal of Excellence because he got lucky. And the whole team, it's almost like they died and went to heaven. I mean, I'm talking about the United States team. I was telling Curtis that I'm taking my interest now watching the women. I think they put on a good show. And if Poland, the one that was playing injured, she was basically skating on will, and I enjoyed that game a lot more than I did the Canada game.
I thought both games, I was on the edge of my seat for both games, but do you think it was wrong for them? This is my question, like Brady Tkachuk, captain of the Ottawa Senators, Austin Matthews, captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Connor Hellebuck, big player in Winnipeg. Was it right for these players to go to the White House and then go the way they did to the State of the Union address, or is that a bad look for them? What do you think?
Well, it's a bad look for them. I don't think they. I mean, Trump will pull anything that he can to try to get votes, and he tried to make himself look good by inviting them there. More power to them, but I mean, like I say, they got lucky. That's the bottom line. They got lucky. I mean, they were outshot. They were outplayed. I mean, we can talk about it till the cows come home, but the bottom line is they got lucky and let the chips fall where they may, and we'll win another 4 years.
Yeah, what can you say? Their goaltender had a heck of a game. He played the game of his life. Some of the saves were incredible. And I mean, some of the missed opportunities, like Nathan McKinnon. How many times does he miss an open net like that? Right?
Well, yeah.
So
Gary Bettman was happy because it's good for the NHL ranking. So, and I personally don't like the 3-on-3. But Gary Bettman put that in there, and I guess everybody have to play a 3-on-3, or they don't play at all, I guess.
Well,
I
the
think
rules
they
are the
should have
same.
went
Yeah,
5-on-5.
well, whatever. The rules are the same for both sides. Canada had its chances.
Oh yeah, Canada.
You got to bury your
Canada,
chances.
like I
You got to
say,
bury your
Benjamin-
chances. But I'm just saying, I guess my point today with this, I don't want to relive the hockey game. I'm barely over it as it is. What I want to get at is, are these players deserving of all the wrath that they're getting? They are getting a lot of heck for going to the White House and for going to the State of the Union address, for being so excited when Donald Trump called. Basically, people are saying, well, you're guilty by association. You're endorsing Trump. Is that what's going on here? That's what I want to get at with that story. 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, lots of lines available. Friday free for all Talkback. Love to hear from you today. Up this end of the week here. Justin is up next. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Rob. How are you tonight?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm just a little concerned about how worked up everyone's getting about the loss of the gold medal toward the Americans. I really have to give kudos and credit to the goalie who plays for Winnipeg. I got to let everybody know that I am a big Canadian fan for hockey, a big supporter of national sports. The Olympics are just over. We didn't do so well, did we, Rob? I mean, we didn't really get very many, did we?
Well, a lot of people are worried that there's been a decline in our performance at the Olympics, and there are questions about whether the government is appropriately funding our Olympic program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Costs a lot of money.
I feel the same way.
To be an elite athlete takes a lot of funding.
You're absolutely right. Now, in Calgary, where I am, we have I call it a society, and it's Winsport, right? And they get to pick and choose who's able to compete and who's not. And even though the better competitor may not get selected, it's not due to their skill. I don't agree with that. I think the best person for the job should get it. I think that is stretched across all things, jobs, education, work experience, all of it. The better person should get the job. But I don't think that we failed. I feel that we did our best, but our fellows are getting a little old and relying on guys like Connor, some of the best players in the world. And being that it's Friday, free for all, I got to bring up Gretz, man. I just have to.
All right.
The best hockey player that ever walked, ever lived. I mean, Ovechkin played so much longer than him and took his record, and that disgusted me. But he still did it, and he still did it, and he did it well, right? And he did it with pride. And these hockey players out there, I just feel so terrible for them. They deserved it. They got their chance, and well, crap, they blew it. It doesn't mean they didn't play their hardest, but all these people talking about if it was only another coach or only another shift or only another line, I can't agree with that. I think it was a team put together by really intelligent people who know the game better than most people in the world. And that's just how the cards folded.
I guess the interesting angle as we end the week, though, because all of these a lot of these players are reporting back to they've reported back to their teams now, their NHL teams, and a lot of these American players play on Canadian teams. Like Hellebuck plays for Winnipeg. Brady Tkachuk is the captain of the Ottawa Senators. As I say, Austin Matthews, captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they're not being asked about things like the run to the playoffs, which is underway now. There's less than 25 games left for a lot of these clubs until the playoffs starts, and it's all about Trump, 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 Trump. And why did you go to the White House? And why did you go to the State of the Union? And why did you laugh when he cracked that joke about the women's team? A lot of people are turned off by that. The clubs, I think, are a little afraid that it could hurt ticket sales. Just the appearances of it. I mean, is it fair? Is it fair criticism? Is it fair criticism that these players are facing? That they went to the White House and met Donald Trump? Maybe shook his hand, got his picture taken with them? What do you think? Have your say right after the news on Talkback. Friday Free-for-All on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, Friday Free-for-All Talkback. Love to hear from you today. Open line, open topic. Some topics in the mix, however. Tony up next. Tony's in Kitchener today. Hi, Tony.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
Very good, Tony. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. As far as the men's hockey thing goes, I mean, I was as heartbroken as every other Canadian when that goal went in. We had our chances. We didn't capitalize on them. Like everybody else, I seen the same game that everybody else did. We outplayed them, but they got the bounces, and that's just the way it goes. I think the 3-on-3 is ridiculous to settle a gold medal game, but those are the rules. Everybody played by the same rules. As far as the criticism goes, I think it's a little harsh. I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, you know, they got the invite. The guys went. Everybody had the freedom to go or not to go. As far as the criticism that they're getting now, I think it's not so much the hate on the players. It's anything that is associated with Donald Trump. Donald Trump haters will always hate Donald Trump. So, I mean, that's just the way it is. I think it's unfair. I mean, obviously, I wish, like most Canadians, we would have won, but obviously we didn't. So, I mean, suck it up. Suck it up. Be a good sport. Yeah, and just leave the guys alone, man. They made their decision to go shake his hand, and so what? Just leave it alone. It is what it is.
All right. Thank you.
Opinion, Rob. Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. Another topic, provincial budgets. We've been following these. It was budget week this week in both Nova Scotia and Alberta. I mean, it's red ink. Holy smokes, as far as the eye can see. In Nova Scotia, the deficit is $1.2 billion. Premier Houston there is getting all sorts of grief because his government is going to make a round of cuts, not to his own staff. No, perish the thought, not the Premier's staff. But cuts are coming to Nova Scotia. Spending is up about 7%, but cuts are coming. So the overall Nova Scotia budget is about $20 billion. 35% of that, by the way, goes just to health care. If you think about $1 out of every $3 goes to health care, you have a provincial debt that is on a path toward $30 billion. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation, my friend Chris Sims is going to join me a little later in the show. We're going to talk about the Alberta budget. But it runs a debt clock for all the provinces. The debt per person in Nova Scotia right now is about $20,000 for every person in Nova Scotia. That's your share of just the provincial debt, let alone your share of the federal debt. But Premier Houston, what do you think about his plan? Lots of cuts coming, lots of programs in Nova Scotia, but you're facing a $1.2 billion deficit. What do you do? Then there's Alberta. My gosh, Alberta. Ralph Klein must be rolling over in his grave looking at this budget. Massive deficit, $10 billion. That's not a surprise given the oil price. No plan to get back to a balanced budget for at least 3 years. Tax hikes. I was shocked by that, I have to say, from Premier Smith, who promised tax cuts when she was first running for election. Your education taxes are going up in Alberta. What do you think of that? There's going to be a new tax on rental cars, and they're hiking the tourist tax, the tax on hotel rooms. Gosh, Alberta used to be debt-free. There was a time Alberta had no debt. Now it's at least, $90 billion in debt, and every Albertan share of just the provincial debt is more than $17,000. What do you think of that? What do you think? Premier Smith is running massive deficits and raising taxes. A united Conservative Party. deficit spending and taxes are going up. She's hiking your taxes more than your local government, your local municipal government. Gosh, I knew it was bad. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. 1-833-668-2577. Rick in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Hello, Rick.
Hey, Rob.
Hi,
look,
Rick.
I'm not, overwhelmed in love for Tim Houston, but he has a point in terms of what he's trying to do. He's trying to increase our productivity, and one way you do that is with resources. And, Nova Scotia was, for years, like, you're not allowed to pull anything out of the ground, okay? You got to leave it there. And
yes.
That has its long-term effect, and we keep giving money to, any and every particular group that asked for it over the years, and the opposition parties keep clamoring now, and you can't cut. So somebody's got to be cut somewhere, and in this particular stage that we're in, he's betting on the fact that if we increase productivity, then eventually, and of course, pull the resources out of the ground and sell them, which is really the magic bullet, if you will, that will get us, out of deficit, at least in the longer term. So in Nova Scotia, it seems like we're taking a page out of Alberta's book, a little irony there, and it looks like they're taking a page out of our book. So we're just trading books, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't really call on that, but if you got an idea about that, you can let me know. But what I did call about was the hockey. And in this particular neck of the woods, it's a very strong liberal thinking place, and there's no shortage of condemnation of the American players for, answering Trump's invitation. And I just also like to mention all the world's best hockey players weren't there. And most of them were, but there's quite a few of them from Russia that weren't at the Olympics. And if the Russians had a team, you might have seen neither Canada or, one or the other would maybe not have been in the gold medal game. And from an athlete's point of view, the Olympics are the worst kind of tournament because it's one shot. It's one
shot.
game.
Yeah.
And all you need is a hot goalie. Hellebuck was good. He had the Canadian players second guessing. That's why Nathan McKinnon didn't score, because Hellebuck had just sort of robbed two guys in a row.
Right. So maybe he got into his head a little bit. Got into his head. I got you. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, the Russians would have had a good team, but they're not in the Olympics for very good reason. That's because of their actions in Ukraine, which was a hot topic this week as well. Money to Ukraine. We could pick up on that as well. Foreign aid. I have some new numbers on foreign aid. It's $12.6 billion a year now. Canada's sending abroad about $12.6 billion. I want to weigh in on that. This is News Radio, Friday Free for All. Talkback.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, Friday Free for All. Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. Lots of topics in the mix. You could bring one up yourself, start a brand new conversation if you want. I want to just bring you up to date on what has been happening in Nova Scotia politics today. First of all, the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, progressive conservative, big plans. He wants to make Nova Scotia a natural gas powerhouse, although there's been not much advancement on the natural gas front. But he's also been promoting this big project called Wind West, which would be a massive offshore wind power project that he hopes one day would sell, clean, renewable wind power primarily to eastern U.S. states. Yesterday, there was a big announcement. The federal energy minister was there. The federal infrastructure minister was there. The Canada Infrastructure Bank top officials were there announcing a wind farm for Milton, Nova Scotia, 33 wind turbines. And the Canada Infrastructure Bank is giving the proponents of this project a $200 million loan, like $206 million loan, as well as a massive clean energy tax write-off that could be worth as much as $130 million. Total job creation at peak to build these wind turbines would be 200 jobs. I mean, a $200 million loan to create 200 jobs. I can do that math. It's about $1 million a job or so. All right. But the premier is really hot on this, and he was getting some questions today at the legislature, really, really sparring with the news media. Let's listen to a little bit of this here.
What is the status of your government's effort to try to get a private sector partner for Wind West?
Oh, that was a great excitement about that. I'm not feeling anxious at all. I'm not going to rush the process because I think that the more information we can provide to the industry about the transmission, about the thought process on opening up the resource, the more information they have, the better the opportunity for Nova Scotians. But I can tell you, I know there are people that want this to fail. I get that all the time.
Sorry, Premier, we got limited time here, and I don't know anyone who's asked for it to fail, but just so I understand what it is.
No, if I can just respond, you asked the question.
Is the private partner someone who would be putting up turbines, or is it a private partner for the transmission line? I just want to make sure I understand.
No, I just want to, you asked the question about the status of it. So if you want me to answer, then I'm happy to.
Who wants it to fail, sir?
I'm happy to answer, but the status of it, I'm giving you my understanding of the status of it. And part of that understanding is that I know that there are people who are looking for negatives and trying to put negative spins on this.
Who?
I heard some of it on the floor of the legislature. I read it in the media. If we want to have that discussion, but what you're asking me the status, I'm happy to tell you the status.
So please do that instead of eating up the limited time we have with you.
No, I'm answering. I'm giving you a fulsome answer. If you're not interested in a fulsome answer, then I can leave.
I'm not here to argue with you. I'm trying to get information.
I'm not getting that when you interrupt me.
To the public about this project that's so important.
How are you going
this is incredible.
How are you going to get someone from the private sector to contribute to a transmission line?
The interest in this project is absolutely through the roof. Like it is an incredible opportunity to build a transmission line. It is an incredible opportunity to manage that transmission line. There will be jobs created in the construction of that. This is like such an opportunity for our province. People are interested in this opportunity. Private money is interested in this opportunity. I don't have to get them interested. They're already interested because it's the best wind resource in the world.
Premier,
guys, any other real questions?
Premier, MLA Druin has asked for cabinet confidentiality to be waived on one very specific issue. Would you waive cabinet confidentiality for that?
Never. Our democracy is based on the principle of members being able to have a free-flowing debate about issues and sharing policies, and I would expect everyone to honor cabinet confidentiality. It's really important to our democracy.
Oh, is that it? No, well, at the end, it's really good at the end because he can't believe the questions and he walks off in disgust and the reporters are yelling at him. Are you kidding me? You're only going to give us 4 minutes of your time? Yeah, very, very, very feisty news conference in Nova Scotia at the legislature in Nova Scotia today. This Wind West would cost at least the early estimate $60 billion for an offshore wind farm, one of the largest wind farms ever created. And all the reporters wanted to know is, well, who's going to build it? Can you tell us? Do you have any idea? Is the government going to build it? Is it going to be a private company that's going to build it? And all he is willing to reveal at this point is that there's been great interest from nothing. All right, be back. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, Friday Free for All Talkback here on News Radio. Love to hear from you today on any topic that happens to be on your mind. Let's go to Dave is in Halifax today. Hi, Dave.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call, Rob.
Yeah,
just want to talk
pleasure.
about the hockey, and this will be my take on the hockey forever. The gold medal game, that was actually 46 years to the day, Miracle on Ice. The U.S. college kids beat the Soviet Union. I call that Miracle on Ice number 2 because we had so many opportunities to win that game. The paddle, Connor Hellebuyck's paddle on Taves, I think it was Taves' shot, McKinnon, Connor McDavid breakaway, couldn't finish. And you know what happens? I could see it. You could just feel it. Now, it was a great game for selling hockey. I thought it was a wonderful game to watch. It was a nail biter. And these things come back to haunt you. I just felt, man, this is going to bite us in the arse, and it did. Now, was the best team Canada? Yeah, definitely. But throughout the tournament, I don't think Canada played that great. But they certainly came to the gold medal game and probably deserved it. But having said that, I don't blame the U.S. for, and Trump and bringing them to the White House, and they agreed to do it. These young men, my goodness, they look young to me. They look like boys. I'm just getting old. But good for them. And when they were in the chamber, the State of the Union, and they were invited in there, that you could just feel the USA, the Republican side, were all on their feet. And that was just, to me, a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
And there was also
actually, if I could just interrupt there, Dave, that was the only part of the State of the Union where members from both parties actually stood up and applauded, was when the hockey team came in. For the rest of it,
the other side, other side, Rob, didn't stand up for anything. And,
they stood
this
up for the hockey team. They clapped for the hockey team. That was the only even sign of unity during the whole thing, and then it kind of devolved from there.
Stood up for it. Yeah, and I think what Trump did had them play right into his hands. He said the first duty of the U.S., the government, is to protect American citizens versus illegal immigrants. And everybody stood up on the Republican side. And then I think a couple, Fetterman, I think, stood up on the Democrat side. Every one of the Democrats sat on their hands. And I'll tell you what, you know what they're going to do? They're going to use that for a campaign come the midterms, and they're going to use that in an ad. And look, half of America loved it. The other half, if you have TDS, then you're going to – this just oozes out of people that hate Trump, that hate success. They don't want him to be successful in anything because there's such a hate on. Look, he's got all us under his cloaking ways. We are just, we don't even think of our own thing. You brought up the Nova Scotia thing. I'm from Nova Scotia. That's a whole different thing. And then when it comes to Canada, one more thing, Rob, you just brought up $12 billion of our money, taxpayers' money, who we voted in, by the way, going to international various things that has no transparency. God only knows where it's going. 23.
Well, I can tell you. I can tell you where it's going. I'll do that in the second hour of Talkback today. I can tell you every country, right down to rounded off to the nearest million. Anyway,
$23.5 billion to Ukraine, folks. And then $8 million to help out a communist regime in Cuba. Right? Come on, we are suffering.
Well,
we have
okay. There's a flip side to both of those things. Okay. You say, well, to a communist regime in Cuba, it's going to be delivered through the United Nations Food Program, and it's going to help people who have a hard time getting access to food right now during a humanitarian crisis. And is Ukraine the fight for freedom, a fight against tyranny? The Prime Minister says their fight is our fight. Is there not something to that? We can revisit that.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2, Friday Free for All Talkback. Every single phone line available right now. We have cleared the phone lines. Wait won't be too long. If you're a first-time caller, mention that. Love to hear from you today. You can pick a topic. We'll do our best to follow along. I'd really like to know, especially for listeners who live nowhere near where this proposed high-speed rail project is going to be built, because it's from Quebec City to Toronto, if it ever comes to pass. But I would really like your thoughts on this. If you're in Halifax, if you're in Calgary today. Last night in the House of Commons, Scott Reid, who's an MP from the Ottawa Valley, who is one of the longest-serving Conservative MPs in Ottawa these days and a very thoughtful guy. He goes back to the Canadian Alliance Reform days. He really does sincerely believe that this is a massive boondoggle in the making. Let's listen to a little bit of Scott Reid here. This was in the House last night.
We have a pretty good idea that in practice, if the costs are not very low and the speed does not cause people don't tend to shift to rail unless the travel time is under 2 hours. So that's not likely to generate the expected ridership. That means that revenues will be very low. The subsidies will be in the multiple billions of dollars every year. Again, we can't afford this. I suspect that if anything does get built, it would be the Ottawa to Montreal part, at which point the low ridership will show the whole thing was a catastrophe and will stop halfway through, much like we did with Mirabel Airport, where it was going to be a giant airport, and once we saw the insane costs and the low usage, the whole thing was shut down.
And that's a theme that keeps coming up with ALTO. It's called ALTO, high-speed rail. Quebec City to Toronto. What this is going to turn out to be, this is going to be the Mirabel Airport Part 2. Though there are those of you out there I know who will remember what a fiasco that turned out to be, this plan that Mirabel Airport in Montreal would be the international gateway out of Montreal instead of what was called Dorval at the time. It's Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport now. And people are now warning, this is the sequel. And people's land is going to be expropriated from them, just like it was with Mirabel. Because this line has this train going right now, right through farmers' fields. As I mentioned to Tom Korski, I know someone with a hobby farm around halfway between Ottawa and Montreal. The line is going to cut right through his property. Might be expropriated. Where's that family going to go? Now, the boosters are claiming it's going to have huge benefits. About half the population lives on this around this corridor. But they said the same things about Mirabel. This was going to be such a great and much-needed airport for Montreal. But 3,000 families were forced off their land to build it. It opens in 1975. Within a decade, it's clearly a boondoggle. In 20 years, there's no passenger traffic at all flying out of there. And by the early 2000s, the passenger terminal's abandoned, and eventually they tear it down. And then there's the cost, enormous cost. And think about the record of building municipal rail, light rail. What's it going to cost to build 1,000 kilometers of rail, given our track record recently in this country with rail projects? It took 12 years just to build the Eglinton Crosstown in Toronto. It was billions of dollars over budget. I could tell you in Ottawa, it was such a fiasco, we had a public inquiry about it. The cost of this ALTO project, according to Scott Reid, right now with the early estimate of $60 to $90 billion, well, that's going to cost, that's roughly $9,000 per family. $9,000 per family, no matter where you live. So if you're in Calgary, Red Deer, Lethbridge, $9,000 for a train you might never see in your lifetime, let alone ever ride? Are you up for that? Let's listen to this.
I don't think we grasp just how badly costed out this really is. The cost, well, there's a cost range that was given. These were stabs in the dark, frankly, but the $90 billion, let's say it's $90 billion. There are 40 million people in Canada, it's 10 million families of 4, 90 billion divided by 10 million is $9,000 for every single Canadian family of 4 across the country. It doesn't matter if you live in Nunavut and will never even see this rail, your family is paying $9,000. Every Canadian family across the country for something that is only going to service people in that narrow corridor. The people whose properties will be sliced up and we'll see their net wealth, they're paying $9,000 too. So is that number to be taken seriously? That in itself is mind-blowingly high. It's higher than our entire national deficit this year.
And there are people like Scott Reed, conservative MP. There are some members of the bloc there saying, gosh almighty, people, wake up to this, wake up to this, wake up to this. This is taking shape now, and we could live to regret it. This is history repeating itself. This is Mirabel all over again. It just has a new name. It's called Alto. The government defends this is going to be great for the country. High-speed rail, bullet trains. Who doesn't love bullet trains? They're even calling it sexy. It's a sexy project. Well, what's it going to cost with these timelines? Like $90 billion. 90 calls it a stab in the dark. I happen to agree with him. That's the early estimate. What do you think it's really going to cost by the time one train is rolling? Maybe you think it has some merit. If you love the idea, I'd love to hear from you today. If you think it's a boondoggle in the making, I have a phone line for you as well. 1-833-668-2577. It's hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friday Free for All Talkback. I do want to talk a little bit about the Alberta budget. That's a whopper of a budget from Premier Smith. And I think some of the moves are quite unexpected. The deficit number, maybe not so unexpected. Tax hikes and new taxes. Wasn't expecting that. But I've asked my friend Chris Sims, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, to jump on the air with us and give us her take on it, because she's much more familiar with the Alberta financial situation than I am. Chris, hi there. How are you?
I'm okay. That was a terrible budget yesterday, though, so I'm pretty grumpy about it.
Okay. Well, let's start with the deficit. I mean, it's not unexpected. They've been telegraphing that for days now. What do you think of it?
Yeah, the deficit's the one thing. Yeah, it's $9.4 billion with a B for folks at home. That is 1,000 million. We throw that word around a lot, but it's a lot of dough. What really astonished me, Rob, is now the province of Alberta's debt is more than $100 billion. Wow. In Alberta.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The late former Premier Ralph, I know, it's psychologically unthinkable. Like, the late former Premier Ralph Klein is famous for many things, but one of them is, of course, holding up that huge paid in full sign with that big smile on his face when we had no debt. Now we're $100 billion in debt. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what could have been done to avoid that, though?
Oh, my goodness. I'm so tired of hearing that, oh, well, the price of a barrel of oil isn't what we want it to be, or, oh, Ottawa is being mean to us. We're in Alberta. Like, the price of a barrel of oil always fluctuates, and Ottawa is usually mean to us. So this is something that we pay politicians and cabinet ministers to budget for. Like, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. They needed to do a serious spending review, ask themselves, is this necessary for me to spend money on this? And so, Rob, they've got the debt is up, spending is up, and taxes are up. Like, they increased spending by 5.7% compared to last year. That's a big hike for Alberta.
Okay. Well, I think the Premier would say, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. We have enormous pressures in the public healthcare system. We have enormous pressures in the public education system. We want to make big investments in public education because the population is growing so much. We have to make those investments. They have to be paid for somehow. So they're going to raise the education property taxes. What's your take on it, Chris?
I'm going to be real clear because you might as well. I'm a big fan of Danielle Smith. I've known her for 20 years. I know you've been acquainted with her too. The Wild Rose, Danielle Smith, would despise this budget. Like, be super mad about it. The Premier of Alberta, so this is not personal, has got some serious butt-kicking to do here. She needs to go through her cabinet, and she needs to go through their staff and their departments and say, where's the money savings? I demand that you find savings. I'll get to the tax hike in a second, Rob, because it was a super sneaky tax hike. And frankly, the UCP campaigned on not raising our taxes. But this is how I know they didn't look hard for savings, okay? So the Taxpayers Federation, we've been telling this government for years, stop giving money to the Alberta Foundation for the Arts. It's a slush fund full of taxpayers' money, and they ladle out money for quote-unquote art. Rob, even when I removed the groups, okay, so I'm not going after, the choir kids going to clarinet lessons, okay? I'm going after individuals. They handed out more than $5 million just last year to individuals. I'll give you an example. They gave $15,000 to this person to fly overseas and roll around on a lawn chair and videotape it. They gave that same person another $15,000 a year before that to fly overseas and hide behind a big sheet of paper taped to the wall. Like, here, another one. I know
it's
this
art,
is my
Chris.
mind.
It's art. It's art, Chris. Come on.
Then people can choose to pay for it, my friend.
All right. Look, our time is tight, Chris. We only have 2 minutes left. So give me your hot take on this education property tax, because this is what a lot of people are keyed in on here.
Yeah, real quick, that arts thing, they boosted the funding for that by $3.5 million. So they can't tell me for 1 second they're looking for savings everywhere. Bull pucky. Not happening. The education property tax is actually a provincial property tax. And a lot of people don't know about it. And they say it's quote unquote for schools. It's a big chunk of people's property taxes. So your listeners in Calgary, like your listeners all through Alberta, a big chunk of their property tax that they think is going to City Hall, it's going to the provincial government. They're hiking it, Rob. They're taking $400 million more from property taxpayers, from homeowners this year. Big tax hike.
Okay. And just very quickly, 90 seconds left here on, like, there's going to be a car rental tax, and what's the other one? The tourist tax is going up.
Tax.
The hotel tax.
Yeah. So right now, the hotel tax, I'm sitting in one right now because I travel for work within Alberta. The hotel tax is 4%. They're jacking it up to 6%. They're going to try to say, oh, it's just taxing visitors. That's not true. There's tons of people who visit and then who work within Alberta. Also, car rental tax, brand new.
And how much is that, Chris, the car rental tax? Do you have?
They're looking, I think they're going to take in about $30 million from that in the first year. Wild.
Okay. So you're not happy with this budget. You're very profoundly disappointed, I think, because it's not the kind of budget I think you expected from this kind of government, right?
No,
Fair enough?
This is not what they campaigned on. This is a terrible budget.
Yeah. Good to hear from you. Thank you. All the best.
Likewise.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Alberta Director, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the day after the whopper of a budget from the UCP in Alberta. But I guess when it comes to provincial budgets these days, really, kind of par for the course. We had credit downgrades for the provincial government in Nova Scotia and in BC, where they have a record deficit as well. Sign of the times, perhaps. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friday, free for all Talkback. Thank you for being patient. Gary in Calgary. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Rob. Well, Chris Sims said it very well, so I'm not going to add anything more to what she has said. What a pathetic budget. Here we are, deeper in debt in Alberta. Same old story, up and down oil prices, and they just can't budget properly. And then I laughed earlier this morning when you were talking with the reporter in Ottawa about how many billions of dollars for high-speed rail. Really?
Yeah.
Where are our priorities in this country when we still have communities that don't have clean drinking water? And yet we have these pie-in-the-sky type projects, high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary, and a rail line from Calgary to Banff. I just shake my head.
90 billion is the starting estimate. Okay? They don't really know, because this is a project that even under their own timelines wouldn't be finished for another 20 years. This is a 2026 figure, 90 billion. right? What do you think? What do you think it could possibly cost by, say, the year 2046?
Well, this is it. It seems like a lot of these projects, and I've been around a long time walking the earth, a lot of these projects go up in cost and there's delays. You know, they try and build a rail line within Calgary or Edmonton and they run into issues and costs rise. It's just absurd. Really, there's that much of a demand for high-speed rail in that part of Canada to spend billions like that?
I just wonder, because our record recently, when it comes to rail projects, now maybe it's different with 1,000 kilometers of rail, but we built a rail line in Ottawa that was only 12 kilometers long. And it took years and years and years. It was years behind schedule, and it was billions and billions and billions of dollars over budget. And then they decided to build a second phase of it. And the second phase ends basically on the outskirts of the city, nowhere near a residential neighborhood. My friend from the Ottawa Citizen told me, he said they should put a sign right there that says, "This is where we ran out of money."
Wasn't that money well spent?
It's just so crazy. Like this Eglinton Crosstown, I don't know if you're familiar with that in Toronto. Okay, it's not that long of a project. It took 12 years. It took 12 years to build the thing.
Rob, we need to dial it in this country. This is hardly a time to be wasting money for pie in the sky stuff and giving away needless money for silly art stuff. We really kind of need to put the brakes on and come to our senses here.
But it's not just that. You know, you say you've been around a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of an old timer. So do you remember Mirabel Airport and the stuff that was going on around there? What if?
Well, I do and I don't. Yeah, I remember some of that history.
Yeah, but what if? Because with that, they had to expropriate. They expropriated 98,000 acres of farmland to build that airport. They kicked 3,000 families off of their farms. What if we're going to do the same thing? Because this bill that passed yesterday through the House of Commons allows expropriation of land. But what if this never comes to pass? What happens to all of these people who have had their land expropriated by the federal government for another pie-in-the-sky infrastructure project that never lives up to the expectations?
Good point.
People,
and to the benefit of who?
Yeah, and where do those people go if their land is expropriated? Where are they going to go? In this housing market, of all things.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, we're wide open today. Friday, free for all Talkback. Love to hear from you. At the number you just heard, 1-833-668-2577. Giorgio up next on the line. Hi, Giorgio.
Good morning.
Yeah, hi there.
It's
afternoon now, Giorgio. Yeah, hear you just fine.
I guess it is. Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in Canada. The thing that bothers me the most about why we're getting LNG from Australia when our own Prime Minister tells us to buy Canadian and we can't even get our oil across the country from Alberta. Can somebody please tell me what's going on and why this is happening? It's very confusing. Oh, great shout out to Chris Sims and Franco Terrazzano. I do listen to them as well.
Yeah. Isn't that an amazing story? Isn't that an amazing story that this is the state of LNG, not necessarily in the West, moving a lot of LNG now in the West, and there are big projects that are going to ship LNG out of British Columbia. Make no mistake about that. But what is happening in Eastern Canada? When,
right? I mean, they were getting their
has
oil
to come from Australia.
When they were getting oil from Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stunning to me.
I don't
highlights
why is he promoting buy Canadian?
I'm as puzzled as you are.
And yet we can't even trade between provinces. You want to talk about bringing our provincial debt down? I'm sure it would have something to do with it if we were trading between provinces freely and buying between provinces freely. Why can't we do that? And it's just showing that this whole system is broken. And you want to talk about Alberta separation? Well, these are reasons why we feel it's not working for us, because we're not working with each other.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure how feasible it would be to bring, say, LNG from Alberta or anywhere in Western Canada, say, all the way down to St. John, New Brunswick. I don't know. Maybe it's feasible, but I don't. The more interesting scenario is what the Premier of Nova Scotia wants to do. I mean, there's more than 100 trillion cubic feet, according to his estimates, of natural gas in the offshore of Nova Scotia. There's also the potential for fracking for gas onshore. And there's a pipeline that I believe is already in the ground. It just needs to be reversed. That would easily provide natural gas to markets in, say, New England, as well as the other maritime provinces. You wouldn't need to bring a ship of natural gas from Australia. That's for sure. But I'm with you, Georgia. I mean, it's just maddening. It's maddening.
I don't understand it. Where if we could just get our LNG from Alberta to a place like Quebec, which is exactly where Australia is shipping their LNG to, I don't understand it. And they're coming from Australia. Like, that's clearly around the world.
Yeah.
But they would rather get their LNG from
the other
Australia
side of
than
the
they
world.
would Alberta.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's insanity. Giorgio, you're right. It's a total and complete insanity. All right, Emerson up next. Hi, Emerson.
Hello, Rob. Nice to talk to you again. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Just fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My biggest peeve is, you know what, Rob, really bothers me is this budget just came out in Alberta, and everybody I talk to, that Danielle Smith, she's a two-trader, and blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. When the election comes, who do they put back in? They prop up same people. Same thing happened with the Liberals federally. Everyone for 10 years. Can't wait to get my hands on the Liberals in the polls, blah, blah, blah. And what do? Elect them back again. So I just wonder, what is it going to take to wake people up? Like, seriously, don't complain if you're not going to do something about it. Like, this is what drives me crazy. I told them, well, who are you going to vote for? Here's the problem. We haven't got an alternative. So, of course, we got to vote the Conservatives again. I go, no, there is an alternative. If you're not happy with what's happening at work, for example, are you going to continue working there, or are you going to try to find another job? You try to find another job. Here, we're going to try to find an alternative. The NDP's out there. Maybe it's not what we were hoping for, but it will wake people up and say, look, we'll take you down. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, we'll take you down. Rob, I'm really frustrated because every time you come on, you always say, worst budget. Oh, my God, talk of the town. And then what happens? An election's called. Guess who's back? Same old, same old. So that's what drives me crazy. Nothing personal against you, because if you were running, you get my vote in 30 seconds or less. Thank you. I love you. Have a good weekend. Have a good weekend. I love you, buddy.
I guess I would ask you. Thank you, Emerson. That's very kind of you. It's a $10 billion deficit. Okay, education property taxes are going up. You have a brand new car rental tax. You already have a hotel room tax. You're going to raise the whole hotel room tax. And really, in the grand scheme of things, raise what amounts to, outside of the education property tax, those other two taxes, car rental tax, the increase in the hotel tax, like chicken feed, really, in terms of revenues, and doesn't get you very far to narrow a $10 billion budget deficit. But it is what it is. I would ask you, Emerson, I know you're not there anymore, but I guess I would ask people who share the view of Emerson, would this deficit number be any lower if it was Naheed Nenshi and the NDP running things in the province of Alberta? Or would it be considerably higher, and would there be higher tax increases and maybe more new taxes? I'll leave that up to you. 1-833-668 2577, because you do have an option. The option is right there, the former mayor of Calgary and the party he leads. Maybe Emerson is suggesting, well, do what they did with the Notley government. Put the NDP in there just to send a message to shake things up in conservative circles. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Russ in High River on the Friday Free for All Talkback. Hello,
How are you?
Russ. Very good.
Hi, I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Just fine. Glad to hear you're well. Now that we have the pleasantries out of the way, what's on your mind?
I was listening to you about that rail down east.
Yes.
And I remember when somebody introduced it. He's no longer a prime minister, but he cut back, and he knew he was going to. There was an election coming, so he had to do something to get that Eastern Corridor vote. What does he pop up? Well, I was down visiting California, and they're building this high-speed rail from Los Angeles to San Francisco. And, we should do that here. But not knowing that we already have a rail running all those places. Isn't it subsidized by us already?
Well, it's Via Rail, but, Via Rail is,
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
That's
Via is
yes.
old, and it doesn't run on time, and the trains are slow, and, it's the oldest rolling stock in the world.
If you look into the boondoggle down in California for their high-speed rail, that's what's going to happen in Eastern Canada. Bazillion dollars over budget, 5 to 10 years late. Anytime any government, and this is not, I'm not trying to say liberal, NDP, whatever.
No. It's a government thing.
Gets involved. It's never going to work. It's never. Instead of going to the people and saying, here's what we want. We need a line from here. We'd like you to bid on it. We're going to figure this is what it is, and let them build it. And then if you want at the end, we'll buy it. But let them build it. The day that's like this pipeline they built, that the Liberals built, that was started out at $6 billion and cost 35 plus. Well, I talked to people that worked on it, and you can understand why it did. So that's all I had. And I'm from Alberta, and I just saw that budget, and I've been a conservative since I was old enough to vote. And
how do you feel being a conservative that is now you're looking at a budget with a huge deficit and tax hikes? How do you feel about that?
Well, I can tell you what it's going to do. This is going to the separation vote is going to run on this, because if we weren't, that equalization money wasn't coming out of Alberta, we would not have a deficit, and that's what they're going to feed on. And first of all,
that's what they'll say. That's what they'll say. Gosh, I can't repeat this how many times? 1,000 times. The money technically is not coming out of Alberta. It's not like Alberta is writing a check to the rest of the country.
I know, and I understand that.
But you're saying it will be spun that way.
Yes, it will be, and you know it, and I know it. It will be, and I know that it's part of your taxes. But but it's still money out of Alberta. That's what it's going to be sold as.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. It's a fair point on your part. Mac up next. Mac. Hi, Mac.
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
Yeah, very good, Mac. What's on your mind?
So I want to talk about a couple of things here. So the high-speed rail thing in Ontario, I live in Calgary now, but I lived in Toronto and London for all my life pretty much. And the people of Ontario in that region are used to, like in Toronto, you got the GO train, you got the subway, you got LRT, you got the streetcars, you got the people there are used to that kind of travel. And I think in the long run, it will work for them, that corridor. I mean, people are going to get displaced to farms and land, but that's just that's the progression of life, right? I mean, it happened when they built the 400 series highways. I'm sure there was land that they had to take away from people and stuff like that. I think bougie Quebec and sophisticated Montreal and all that, I think they'll come into Toronto on that rail. catch sporting events, go to a theater in the district in Toronto, catch a concert. We got lots of attractions in Ontario, Niagara Falls, the waterfront, Lakeshore. I think eventually that it will work. I think that it's going to cost a lot. But I think that people, now I live in Alberta now. I moved here about a year ago. I live in Calgary, and I don't know too much about the politics here. But what I do know is when I go to buy something at a store here, and let's say it's a couple $100, when I walk out of Canadian Tire, it's only like $210 or $208 or whatever the tax is. Go to Ontario and feel their tax, man. When you walk in, you buy something, you're paying an extra $40, $50 in tax. I don't know. The property taxes there are higher.
Sure.
So, I don't
Why
really
did you move
feel
there?
it here. Well, my family, my wife and kids came out here because her family was out here, and we'd lived in Ontario for 15 years, and she wanted to be closer. And I had a business that I shut down, so I moved out here. And I like Calgary, I like Alberta, but go to Ontario, live there for a couple of years, and see the taxation there. We'll have to see it.
I see. What you're saying is you don't know how good you have it. You don't know how good you have it. You're saying. Yeah, and that's interesting. There's more of a transit-oriented mindset in a place like Toronto, certainly Montreal as well, with the metro in Montreal. Maybe you're onto something. Certainly the proponents are spinning it this way. Oh, imagine, you're in Toronto. You could leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. You could be in Montreal by 11 o'clock. You can have your meeting with those business people that you want to meet in Montreal. You get back on the high-speed rail line 3 hours later, you're back in Toronto again. I mean, that's how they're spinning it. It's a huge price tag, though. 60 to 90. Well, what is it? Is it 60? Is it 90? What's 30 billion between friends? And that's the starting figure. What do you think it's really going to be 10, 20 years from now? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In the home stretch here of the Friday Free for All Talkback, Dean. Are you with me, Dean, in Calgary? No Dean. All right. Let's try Cambridge, Ontario. Jeff is there. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, good day
I'd
from
like
you, Jeff.
to talk about de minimis. Post office de minimis. It's where August 29th of last year, U.S. dismantled de minimis. And that allowed, what happened was, prior to that, you were able to ship up to 800 pounds without any tears on your package. So on August 29th, U.S. dismantled that, and now basically no shipping goes to U.S. because no one wants to pay. If you're shipping to the U.S., that person, that buyer, like if you're on eBay, that buyer has to pay double what he paid for, let's say it's a T-shirt that he bought. So he's now paying shipping plus, let's say the T-shirt was $35. He's paying now for a tariff $70 on top of the shipping.
Wow.
So everybody on eBay in Canada that sells stopped shipping to U.S.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I haven't heard anything about it news-wise.
Neither
but
have
then
I.
again, and it's de minimis, DE-mini-miss. And it's about a week after that, less than a week after, the post office strikers, well, they weren't on strike, but they came back. Post office does not, they will not tell you how many packages go to the States before that or after that, because they say it's a trade secret. But I shipped 8 out of my 10 packages went to the States, and now I don't ship hardly anything because.
This is interesting. So, are you you're an eBay seller? You sell stuff on eBay?
Yeah, for 20 years, and it used to be.
Oh, really?
It was great. Like, I don't sell the same thing. I sell different stuff. It's never one thing the same, or two things the same. Sorry. So it's bottomed out. Like, I don't know what
it's bottomed out.
Any other platform is like seller wise, but it's almost to the point now where it's no longer. It's not even a hobby anymore. It's just a.
Is that what it was for you, Jeff? Is that what it is for you? A hobby? You do that as a hobby or like a side gig, a side hustle kind of thing?
I had the addiction of just buying crap, I call it.
Right.
You know, for the sake of, you know, knowing that sooner or later I'll be able to make money. But when I retired, it'd be a bit of income coming in, which now.
Yeah.
So eBay started. You had to give them your SIM number. So now it's taxable. Anything you sell above certain, I think it's $300 now. You're charged for income, and it's so much. It tears.
But you're saying after this, with the elimination of this de minimis, you're calling it, right? Yeah. I'm going to look this up. This would be a really interesting news story. How many people are like Jeff, who have, you know, a side gig or a side hustle selling stuff on eBay, and would have customers in the United States that don't want to buy this stuff anymore because the price is double? That's really interesting. Thank you for that. That's a good news tip, Jeff. That's a great news tip, buddy. Great way to end the week, too. Thank you. Bye-bye. Be back on Monday. The news is next.